So can you please graph the 2 points on our first question, 5, 9, -7, -7. Put those on your graph, and I want you to just try to find how far apart are they from each other on the graph. I'm going to give you like 2 minutes. Try to find how far away they are with your partner. My hint to you would be to draw something else besides 2 dots on your graph. So we're putting our dots on here. I know you're probably finishing up, but can I have your eyes and your ears again, please? In 3, 2, and 1. Can someone raise their hand to tell me how you put a triangle on there to help you out, Nora?
So you draw like down from the 0.59 to the 0.5 -7.
Okay.
Yeah, 8. And then you go over to the point, and then you go up.
So not only did Nora draw a triangle, but she drew a right triangle. Can I have a new person tell me why this would be helpful in finding the distance? Linnea? Tell me how you use Pythagorean theorem.
So I found the length of the A side and the B side, which was 16 was the A side and B was the 12 was the B side. So then I did 16 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared.
So C must be that side that we actually care about that we don't know. Okay? Then keep going for me. Pythagorean theorem from this week, what'd you do?
I did the square of 12 and 16 and I added them together, which was 144 plus 256, which was 400.
All right, squared them both, added them up. C squared is 400, so
C is 20.
square rooting them both, we get a nice whole number. Those 2 dots are 20 units apart.
Oh yeah, I got this.
What questions do you have for me on how we used a triangle to make that work? Because otherwise, I don't know how I would just look at that picture and see that. We used Pythagorean theorem to find this, and that is an option for you anytime that you have a graph to do that with. But in math, we have a formula called the distance formula. It's on your EOC sheet. It's not one that I would spend my time memorizing because there's lots of pluses and minuses and just stuff that it would be easy to mix up. So I wouldn't spend time memorizing it. I would just use it from the formula sheet. We are going to write that down. We can use that as well. So could you please write down with me on your note sheet right here that our formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Let me make it so you can see that a little bit easier. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. This is on our EOC formula sheet. We don't have to memorize it. Really, this is just the Pythagorean theorem written differently. Because Linnea said that she used Pythagorean theorem, excuse me, Caleb, and she found 12 squared plus 16 squared is C squared. Well, this part, the difference in the x's, is what the 12 was. It went from this x to that x, and it was 12, and she squared it. This one, y2 minus y1, is the same as the 16. It was how far away the 16s were. And then at the end, after she had squared them both and added them together, Linnea had to square root the 400, so that's where our square root is from. So it's just a messier way to write Pythagorean theorem. If you have a graph and want to do just drawing a triangle, you can. If I give you a question like the one below where it says use the distance formula, then I need to see you actually use the distance formula. So here's my hint to you that I would have you label or put on the question column is to label your points. If you have to use the distance formula because I say so, then I would label my points. What I mean by that is label them x1, y1, x2, y2, so that you make sure that your 4 numbers go in the right spots. So So if we're plugging in our numbers to our formula, I'm going through this pretty quickly. Stop me if you need me to.
You wrote. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
I'm drawing the giant square root, and then in parentheses, I'm supposed to do my x2 number. That would be 2 minus my x1 number, so minus -2, and then square it. I know that looks funny, but that's me plugging it in correctly. Then I'm adding on the y2 number, which is 5, minus the y1 number, which is 1, and squaring that part. So I've put my 4 numbers where they go in the formula. Questions for me so far? Now it's just order of operations. So the first thing that I would simplify is changing that to 2 plus 2 squared, because remember, if I have 2 negatives in a row, it's adding. Then the second parentheses is just 4 squared. So is the first one, though, so why don't I write them both as just 4 squared plus 4 squared?
Oh my gosh.
That means that it's the square root of 16 plus 16, or it's just the square root of 32. We'll go ahead and leave our answer in radical form. I just need to check to make sure I can't simplify that radical. Can I? Yes. What perfect squares could I split that into to simplify it? Nora? 4 and 8, or 16 times 2. Which one's going to have me do less steps? 16 and 2. So I'm going to do 16 and 2. The largest one I can think of will help me. So if I split it into 16 and 2, what's my final answer?
D is equal to
4 square root of 2. Yes. What questions do you have for me on our new formula that you don't have to memorize? You just have to label your 2 points and put them in. All right, on the back, same 2 points as on the front. Can you graph them again, please? And I'll give you 2 minutes. I want you and your partner to try to find their midpoint. What would I mean by midpoint? The point that's in the middle of those 2 points.
Really?
So I'm going to go ahead and write our definition on the side for midpoint. It's just the point that's halfway between the other two. You spend a couple minutes trying to find where that would be. Give me your best guess. Even if you have no idea how to get it, give me a guess of the point for their midpoint. We've got our guess for where you think is midway between these 2 points. I saw lots of people noting that it was 20, the distance, so we needed to figure out where would 10 be. We know that it's 10 between the points, but the problem is, where is that? How do I count 10 diagonally? What were you thinking, Emma?
What I did was, because when we drew our triangle, the bottom
Okay.
base was 12 across.
Okay.
So halfway would be 6 across.
Okay, so if I draw 6 squares, that's half.
And then vertically it was 16, which half would be 8 across.
Okay, so why don't I draw 8 up, and then where did that land you if you went halfway over and halfway up? Ooh, -1, 1. So some of our guesses were very close to there, just eyeballing it. This would be how we could get there. If I went halfway over and halfway up, would I also get half for the diagonal? Would it be 10?
No. Yes.
How do we check? Let's do it real quick. 6 squared plus 8 squared is whatever our answer is. So that would be 36 plus 64 is the diagonal squared. 100 is our answer squared. Square root it. Yep, it sure worked. So we just had to cut that triangle in half. What questions do you have for me on that? Just cut our triangle in half and we got halfway there. Just like, back together, please, all back together. -1, 1, yes, was our midpoint. Just like with our distance, we also have a formula for midpoint if we don't have a picture. It's on your formula sheet. You don't need to memorize it. Here it is. Our midpoint formula is you take the 2 x numbers and you add them together and you divide it by 2. That's like finding the average of the x's or finding the mean of the x's. When you add everything up and divide by how many you have, that's what we're doing. We're finding their average. Same thing with the y's. We add the two y's together, y1 plus y2, and divide it by 2. So this is our midpoint formula on our formula sheet. I need you to show me using this if it says use the midpoint formula. So we're going to do one example where it says that. Again, my suggestion to you is to label your points because I see mistakes. The only mistakes I tend to see are people who plugged the number in the wrong spot or were going too fast and doing it in their head, and so they mixed up positives and negatives. So if I label my points x1, y1, x2, y2, and I plug them in, I would have x1 is 8 plus x2 is 2 divided by 2. Then a comma, y1 was -1 plus -7 over 2. So that would give me 10 over 2 and -8 over 2, which just gives me 5 -4. So if I have a picture, I could do it a picture way with some triangles. Or if I don't, I can use my formula sheet and do it with my formula.